Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Vanessa Dunn, Guyton, and I am the proud founder and executive director of Hush No More. Hush No More supports survivors when they're ready to come forward to share their story, to find resources, or just to have somebody to listen to them. We also provide training in our communities on what we call the hush topics: sexual assault, domestic violence, sex trafficking, child sexual abuse, incest. All of those topics that families and organizations have a hard time talking about and dealing with, and we know that it's occurring. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so all of our amazing guests have experienced domestic violence, and now they are advocating to make sure that it no longer happens in their family and the other communities as well. And so I am truly honored to be able to share those stories with you and to encourage you, not from a place of sadness or from a place where we're hurting, but from a place of healing. That is so important that we get to that space in our lives. And so that's why we're doing this, to just encourage those who are still struggling in a domestic violence relationship, or to raise awareness for those who may find themselves in a domestic violence relationship. So I am honored and excited tonight because I have a very special guest that I think is amazing. So let me bring her on.
Hey.
Hello, Misty. I have the
Hey.
amazing Mr. Shavers, and she is just a phenomenal spirit. And we're going to talk about surviving pure hell. Like, a lot of people go through a lot, and she's going to share with us some of her experiences. So, welcome to Hush No More Champions, beautiful.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that you decided to let me come on and talk about actually my story and some of the things that I do.
Yeah. So, we met via Facebook, right? And we haven't
Yes.
met in person. And I'll tell people all the time that I meet the most amazing individuals on social media. I don't have that social media platform where I have ignorant people. I have amazing people on my timeline. And so I'm just real thankful that you trust me enough to be able to share your story and to share it with my audience. I think that is so special. So I just want to thank you and honor you at the very beginning. So thank you, Misty.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate you for having me on.
You're welcome. So where do you live in the United States of America? Where is Misty from?
Actually, I live in Susanmore, Alabama. Small
Where
little country town.
gotta be small. Where is it close to? What major
Um,
city so we can get
well,
an
it's
idea?
Blunt County, and it's close to Onion, Alabama. So,
Okay,
I mean, I guess it's major cities is Birmingham.
it's
So,
Birmingham. Yeah.
mhm.
When I meet people from Alabama, they always talk about their county because the
Yeah.
cities are so small. So I have a lot of family in Walker County. And so
Yeah.
I think it's funny to be able to say, oh, yeah, this is the county I'm from. Originally from Florida, and we don't talk about counties. You just say the
Right.
city. So it's a
Yeah.
little different.
Yeah.
So thank
Right.
you for coming all the way from Blount County to talk to me today. So,
Well, you're welcome.
how did you grow up? What was your life like growing
Um,
up? Tell us about the young Misty.
I grew up in a small town called Altoona, Alabama, and that's not very far from Susanmore. And I grew up in a little rural town and everything, and so I was a very talkative kid. I just love to talk. And I always got in trouble in school for talking, and but I experienced some bullying when I went to school, and so I think that had a little bit of something to do with self-esteem issues at a young age. And I started having some difficulties then, and then I experienced a childhood house burnt my house burned in a childhood moment when I was like 10 years old. So that also happened. So I think that in combination with being bullied and then losing my home at such a young age, it just sort of triggered something in me that caused me to be sort of sad. Like in my preteen years, I went through a lot of difficulties there. And then I actually went from one school to the next school because of that reason, because I had had such a hard time in one elementary school. So I decided my brother had already started going to school at this other school, which is Susan Moore. And my dad graduated from Susan Moore, and it was kind of a family thing because I had lost my dad when I was a baby. So to get to go to the school that he played football and graduated from was really, really a good thing. And it wound up being my home school, and that's where I've been at ever since. And I support them immensely. I'm a huge Bulldog fan, And, it's just my thing. It's where I'm from and how I feel. And, but yeah, that was the young Misty. I really had a issue when I was younger. And then, my preteens wasn't the best years either. And so, and then fast forward to about 17 years old, I met an older man or older guy.
Mhm.
And that's when I started falling into some trouble. You know, um, I got pregnant at 17 and got married at 18. And then everything was great. And then all of a sudden, I started getting abused. So that was when the abuse started.
How much older was he?
He
If
was
you
24. He
Mhm.
was 24, I was 17, and of course my mother was dead set. "No, no, this ain't happening." She actually took him to court over child custody back then, for interference with child custody, and so but whenever she found out I was pregnant, she dropped it, and she said, "Well, I'm gonna give him a chance to be a
Mhm.
man, and I'm gonna go ahead, when you turn 18, if you wanna marry him, that's on you, because I don't wanna sign papers stating you can marry him. So if something happens, I'm not feeling responsible. And so at 18, we did wind up getting married. And then about 2 or 3 months later, abuse started. But at that time, I didn't know that was abuse. I was like, what is this? I mean, he started out with really a gradual type of abuse, like picking up something like, a cracker box and hitting me in the face with it, like on the side of my eye.
Mhm.
And just different things like that started occurring. And then it went from that to verbal just torturement. He just tortured me verbally. And then the abuse started getting worse and worse and worse as time went on. And, at a young age, I just had a baby. I didn't, I'm sure I was going through postpartum at that time too. So that on top of being just, I'm talking about beat, I'm talking about like a man, and all of that going on along with the mental abuse and the emotional breakdown, it desensitized me. Like I was desensitized because the beatings were so brutal and the abuse was so brutal. Like he mentally just tore me apart. And I was fearful of him, I was afraid, and when the police department did get involved in the town that I lived in at the time, which wasn't where I'm at now, but right up the road from here, they pretty much threatened to put us both in jail, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. And this was witnessed, the abuse was witnessed, like, on the side of a roadway. We were walking down the side of a roadway, and it was summertime. So it was real hot in Alabama during the summertime. Well, his face was red, and my face was red from walking, but my face was red because he had been pulling my hair out, slinging me in a ditch. And then by the time we got to the trailer we lived in, the police department came out. And the cop immediately, when he opened my trailer door, said, "I'm taking you both to jail for domestic violence." And I was like, oh, this is what this is called. I didn't even know what domestic violence was and never had even heard of it until the police told me what it was. And then I was like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, domestic violence, whatever that is, that's what's happening to me.
Mhm.
And but the girl that called the police told him that he was the aggressor and he was abusing me. But after that incident, it put this it put this feeling in me like I better not ever call them again, because if I do, they're not going to do anything. I'll go to jail too.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot. I
It
don't know about
does.
now, but it used to happen a lot. I think that we're getting to a place now where it doesn't happen as often. Especially, I'm hoping and praying that isn't happening here in the county I'm in, since I have been bringing awareness to it, to domestic violence. That's something that had never been brought to the county that I live in, prior to me bringing it here.
I want to ask you some questions. And you're right about the police. They did have that concept of, well, I'm just going to take both of you to jail, right?
Hmm.
And it was
Right.
very scary. And so they didn't really have the right approach. So I'm glad when survivors come forward and talk about their experience with police
Hmm.
officers, because that does train them. That
Right.
does give them a new outlet, a different perspective of how to treat victims during domestic violence, because a lot of times they didn't know how to handle it. And sometimes you do still have times when it's difficult with the police. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And a lot of police officers are taking training now as it relates to domestic violence in working
Yes.
with victims, period, sex trafficking, sexual assault. They just didn't do right when it came to victims. And so I'm glad
Right.
that you brought that up because that is something that we must focus on to change. But you
Right.
said something that made me very interested, that you didn't know that you were being abused or that it was domestic violence. Can you
Mhm.
explain that to people? Because a lot of times I hear, well, how didn't you know that this was domestic violence? How didn't you know it was wrong? Can you explain that? Because I think it's important that we talk to our children about it because we don't want
Mhm.
them to be like you, where you're like, I don't even know what this is. Like, I can't even believe this
Right.
is happening. So, can you
Right. Yeah.
go more in detail into that?
Well, whenever you fall in love with someone, the last thing on your mind is that they're going to hit me.
Mhm,
They're going to be mean to me. They're going to cut me down and call me names. They're going to convince me that no one else in this world is going to love me but them. And then when they do beat me, they're not going to beg and cry real tears and tell me they're sorry. And me not knowing what domestic violence was because it wasn't talked about. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
the word domestic violence wasn't taught. I knew I was being mistreated, but I didn't know what that actually was. Did it have a name? And then if so, what was the name? And then when the law officer said it, then it was like, okay, that's what's happening to me. Does that make sense?
mhm.
But I never thought that a man that loved me would ever put his hands on me or ever be mean to me or cuss me or call me all these ugly foul names. I thought this person loved me. I'd had his baby. I had this picture in my mind of a white picket fence and a happily ever after, because we get taught at a young age that you grow up, you get married, you know, and then by God's rule in the Bible, you stay married and, you have a family. And that was what was going on in my mind, even then at that young age.
Well, that's what we're taught, and
Right.
especially if
Yeah,
you
we're
grew up
taught
in a
that.
religious family. Yeah, if you
Right.
grew up in a
Yeah.
religious family,
Yeah.
it's until death do you part. You're married. Like,
Right.
you've
Well,
taken a vow.
my mom really wasn't what you call very religious, but she believed in God and we was sent to church. Vacation Bible schools. We went to church. I got saved like 3 or 4 times growing up, baptized. And so Christianity was a part of my childhood. Yes.
Mhm, yeah. And I'm glad that you spoke on that because our values, right? Our value system, our culture, all that plays a role in how we stay in a relationship, that we
Mhm.
deal with the relationship and we're taught to stay. And people will
Right.
say, leave, but it's not easy to leave when that's what you're taught, that's what you know.
Right.
Did you feel
Right.
like any of it was your fault? Did you blame yourself?
Um Yeah, I did. I did blame myself. I thought, well, maybe if I was better, a better person, or maybe if I did this better, maybe he wouldn't do that, or there was those questions in my mind of, well, maybe I'm not doing this right. Well, maybe I'm not being a good enough wife, or maybe I'm not folding clothes the right way. Which, of course, everything I did was wrong. I didn't fold something right. I didn't cook something right. I was cooking hamburger helper on the stovetop one time and he come up behind me and popped me in the back of the head for no apparent reason. No apparent reason. Obviously, I wasn't cooking it at the right temperature or for whatever reason, but I wasn't allowed to cook neither. So when I got that opportunity and got to cook, and he had a violent outburst, he would take it out on me.
Why
So
couldn't you
yeah,
cook? Why couldn't you cook? Why were
you
you not?
know, I don't really know that answer because um he wanted me to work. I was the workhorse in the relationship. I worked as a CNA, a certified nurse's assistant for people that don't know what that is, at a nursing home. When I was 18 years old, I got a certification. After going to fast food, I was like, nah, I don't want to do this. So I became a certified nurse's assistant and was for like 19 years. And so I he just wanted me to work. He wanted my checks. He got my paychecks every time I got paid. He spent it on what he wanted. And, if I bought anything outside, like if I bought like say a fern or a plant or anything out of my check, if he allowed me to have money and I was able to buy anything, his mother would literally jump on me
So
and threaten
his
to
family
abuse.
knew his
Oh
family
yeah,
knew
yeah,
as well.
yeah, his mother knew I was being abused, and actually my mother, when she found out, of course she was furious, and I never told her. Mom just knew because I had told her when I was working at the Dairy Queen and Oneana at the time, and this was before I became a CNA, and I had a black eye, and my mom's like, "How'd you get that black eye?" And I said, "Mom, I fell at work and got hit in the face." And she's like, "How'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, I hit it on the counter." I come up with this elaborate story. Well, she called the guy that owned the place, that was my boss, said, "I want to know if my daughter was ever injured at your work. I mean, at your place." And he was like, "No, ma'am, she's not been injured here." And that was like a light went off in her head. She's like, "Oh, well, he's beating my daughter. He's abusing her."
Mhm.
And my mother had confronted his mother, apparently, about the abuse. And his mother, of course, was like adamant, no, her son wasn't abusing me. And then she knew he was going to beat me if she said anything in front of him about it. And she did. She brought it up in front of him and me. She said, "You better stop telling your family you're being abused. Do you understand me?"
So she
And
never
then,
protected you. She
no,
protected her son.
yes, she still is till this day. She's
Mhm.
still protecting her son. He's involved with someone around the same age as his own daughter.
So he's still
Yeah.
the abuser.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
listening to you, and you've identified the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, the financial abuse. Also, the spiritual abuse is there because your faith was used against you not to be able to leave out. Like you've hit
Mhm.
all the different types of domestic violence that a lot of times people don't even understand that that's what it means. Like you didn't know when he was taking your check, that's financial abuse.
No.
You had no idea of what it was
No,
called.
no, I didn't know any of that because, I was an 18-year-old kid, I mean, or, I had just turned 18, had a baby. I mean, how was I supposed to know all these things? I had no clue. And I had no one to mentor me. There was no agencies nearby that I could call on. I didn't have anyone. There was virtually no one. I had my family, I had my mother and my brothers, but at the time, of course, I wouldn't go to them because I was afraid for their lives. He had threatened to burn them up. He said, "Well, if you go to your mom and your brothers, I'll just burn them up in their sleep. They'll catch on fire." Stuff like that. I got threatened. So it was one of them type deals.
Did your mom and your brother try to get you to come back home?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They confronted him uh, more than one time, a couple of times. My brother had confronted him at a ball game, and he pushed me in front of my brother. My brother is a statuesque kind of guy, he's kind of intimidating, and he pushed me in front of him. And my brother's like, "Oh, you're real big. You got to push my little sister in front of you," because at the time I was, relatively small girl. And he threatened my brother with a knife. My brother said, "Bring it. I'm ready." He was ready to just whoop him because he had been so mean to his sister.
Mhm.
And I had a baby, and he wouldn't let us see our family. He wouldn't let me and the baby, my little girl, see my family. He was isolating us. So, yeah, I
After
think
all
that
of
I
that,
virtually,
say it
I
again. I'm
think I,
sorry.
I think I virtually went through every type of abuse in that relationship.
Yeah.
I do.
People often ask why a person doesn't leave. And I always respond, well, why is that individual hitting them and hurting them?
Hmm.
Instead of asking why you didn't leave. And I know that sometimes people are always thinking that. So I'm going to ask the question so that you can explain it to them from the mindset of a victim so that people can understand that. Why
Hmm.
didn't you leave?
Well, I did leave about 6 times, probably even more than that. 7, 8, maybe, I don't know how many times it was I left. But whenever I would leave, he would call me squalling. "I'll never do it again. I promise to God, I love you. Please come back to me. It's never going to happen again. Misty, you know what I've told you." Sometimes he would be threatful. Sometimes it would be, "If you don't come back, I'm going to hunt you down. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to burn your family up. It was different things. So at times it was an emotional thing. When I first started leaving him, it was this, oh, woe is me. I'm sorry. I went through abuse too. I didn't mean to do this. It'll never happen again. We can make this work. We're supposed to be a family. All these things he would say to me. And of course, I was in love with this man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that sounds crazy for people to think you're in love with someone that can hurt you, but you're not expecting for this to happen. These are things that happen after you've fallen head over heels in love with this person. And if you're a scared individual, you're being scared by this person, you don't know what's going to happen. And I've heard often, people say, my marriage has been perfect. I would have never put up with domestic violence. I'd have never went through abuse.
Ain't no
Never
perfect.
say no. Never say never either, because you never know, someone in your family could wind up with someone like that. If you didn't, be careful.
That's right.
Someone that you know, your friends, family, somebody that you know close by could wind up like that.
Everyone knows someone, whether you know
Right.
it or not. Everyone knows
Exactly.
someone that is dealing with domestic violence.
Right.
And it's
Yes.
real and it happens. And I thank
Right.
you for explaining how a person can leave and come back, because you hope that
Mhm.
they change. You're hoping that this person that you
Yeah.
love, you remember the good, and you're hoping that
Right.
this last time maybe they really are going to change. And so you go
Right.
back.
Yes.
Yeah, and you
Right.
go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And
Because
that
you're
must.
hoping somewhere deep down that they're going to change, that this person's not going to act this way ever again. And
Mhm,
maybe you can get past this. Maybe y'all can go to the preacher. Maybe we can talk about it on a spiritual level. But it doesn't always happen that way. Some people do never, ever, ever change. They continue to spin in the cycle and the control wheel,
yeah,
the wheel of abuse.
the will of abuse. And you're just hoping that it stops. You're hoping that this
Right.
is the last time, and it's not.
Yes.
Melinda
Right.
said she can totally relate. She had to justify getting $20 for gas from an ATM within like 30 minutes. She was then told she has to let him know when she was getting money before making a withdrawal. That
Mm.
is very strict financial abuse when somebody
Right.
controls every dollar that you have.
Right.
And it's very difficult to be able to manage that. So thank you,
Right.
Melinda, for sharing, because a
Yeah.
lot of times
Thank you.
people just can't understand how this could possibly be happening, but you just pretty much conform because you don't want the abuse to continue. I
Right.
want to talk about his family, his mother particularly, if you don't mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
How would you have felt if she was more supportive? Could she have done something different?
Oh yeah, she could have. She could have took up for me. I mean, she could have. She could have she says she did. Till this day, she'll say little things like, I tried to get you to leave. She'll say certain little things, but
Mhm,
she never really supported my way out. She by her threatening me at 18 years old, um, she threatened me. Took me to work one morning and threatened to beat me up over a fern that I bought with my money that I worked for. That part of it I'll never understand, but seeing the cycle continue with her son, and seeing the fact that he is with a much younger girl, just like I was. This girl has a mental disability and done had two babies with this man.
mhm,
Okay. And she, when she talks to my daughter, which she does, she will bring up this girl, but just bash this girl to pieces. How sorry this girl is, how low down this girl is. Never one time does she help or even want to support this girl.
mhm.
Same thing. It's the same thing. It's just a different era.
Different era.
Different
Oh,
era.
what about your daughter? Was she affected by it?
She was, well, she was. Um, he helped her one weekend because I never thought he would abuse her in the manner that he abused her. It's something that I don't talk about often because it's concerning her. You know what I mean?
It's her
And
story.
she doesn't remember that, and I think the good Lord above, she doesn't remember it. But police reports and pictures was lost by a police department. Not my local police department, but where the incident did occur. They lost everything. He was never charged.
I think it's important for parents to understand that children are also affected by domestic
Yes,
violence,
they
if not
are.
directly, indirectly, mentally,
Mm,
sometimes physically. And
right.
sometimes parents try to stay together for the children, but I
Mhm.
always want them to reflect and understand that it's not a healthy place for children to be in. It's difficult.
Right.
It's really hard.
It
Um,
really is.
it's very. Melinda has a question for you. She said, "How long did you stay in the marriage, and what made you leave the last time?"
Okay. I was in the marriage for 3 years, and you know something? Those 3 years seemed like a lifetime for me. I guess because it was just about an everyday event that I was traumatized by him. And so what really got me to leave was that I was really spiritual, and the day that I left, I got on my knees and I talked to God about it. And I said, "Look, God, if you'll get me out of this, I promise you I'll never look back and I'll never come back. Just get me out of this safe." Because he had slung a whole set of dishes, like a whole set of glass plates at my legs, and shattered them all, like my knees, hit my knees with them. Lucky it didn't break my knee, like my leg, and luckily it did not cut me up severely. I mean, I got a few scratches, but that's what my breaking point was. And plus, my daughter was not with me either. My mother had taken temporary custody of my daughter at that time. I'm glad and grateful to God now. Looking back on that, I'm so grateful I had my mom there to do that. A lot of people that think they know the situation and that, oh, Misty was a sorry mom back then, they don't know or realize everything that happened. I was a young, scared, abused, traumatized young girl. And so back then, mom had temporary custody. I missed my daughter like crazy. I wanted to be a mom that would be good for her. And I know I needed to get out of that abuse. I didn't need to not be a mother, and I needed to go home. And I just was fed up, kind of. I was just fed up. It took me getting fed up. Plus, I knew that this wasn't really love. This what well, I got to praying about it. I had to really dig spiritually and leave him.
Mhm.
And so that day in that bathroom when I hit my knees, I left and I never looked back.
You never look back. I am proud
No,
of you because it's not easy. It's one of the hardest things.
no.
And people will talk about you and have little slick things to say. And I tell people all
Mhm.
the time when you do that, it makes it harder for an individual to leave. It doesn't help
Yeah,
them when you put them
no.
down. It doesn't help them.
Mm-mm. No,
Yeah.
because I mean, after that, I went through another abusive relationship, which was different. It wasn't physical. Um, you know, It wasn't a physical relationship abusive, it was a different type of abuse. So, much different than it was emotional, but I also experienced drug abuse with the second marriage to
Mhm.
kill my pain, essentially, because I didn't have counselors. I didn't know what to do. I was like, "Okay, drugs, okay." They were offered to me. I was told not to do drugs, but at the time, I was afraid to do them, but I tried them, and it only took one time. I wasn't strung out on drugs, but it became to be a social drug abuse.
Mhm.
But I did get clean from drugs too.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
hard. How many years
Mm.
have you been clean?
Since I was like 27 years old, so it's been a long time. Yeah,
Yay.
yeah.
Thank God. I always
Yeah,
celebrate
something
people when
else I
they
don't
talk
really,
about it.
you know, I don't really talk about certain things,
Mhm.
but I am planning on writing a book. So I've been saving a few things back, but you know,
I think though when you talk about overcoming abuse and
mhm,
drug abuse and
mhm.
I think that makes people more relatable to you because you're not the
Yeah,
only one. I've
right,
talked to a lot of women and men who were in an abusive relationship and ended up in another one, but it was different than the first time, right?
right,
So you look for
right.
different signs, different ways. You still want to be loved. You
Yeah,
still looking for that individual to love you and to cherish you.
right.
And but you still didn't find it. How did you get out of the drug relationship?
Well, that one was a little different. In 2004, my grandmother, the only thing I had left of my dad, I found her dead. And it really, really destroyed me mentally. I had stopped drugs before that, though. I
Mhm.
just laid them down. I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to let it take my life. I want to be a mom. I want to, you know, being a mom to me throughout those years was really important to me. Although that my mother, got temporary custody of my daughter, it was a difficult thing because I had a stepfather that was involved also. And and he didn't have none of his kids. He had left his kids in Michigan, and never had been a father, but then wanted to dangle my daughter over my head. So it was really just an emotional roller coaster.
Mhm.
And whenever I quit doing the drugs and found my grandmother, the day that we buried my grandmother, he told me he didn't love me no more. He chose drugs over me. So that's how that ended.
Mhm. But you would not have left because you loved him.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
I
And
knew that there, I knew that I guess I thought that he would change also. You know what I mean? Because
mhm.
I took him out of his hometown and moved him away from the drug dealers and the drug abuse, I thought, but he left and went back to it. So, yeah, that's how that went.
That's it. You like, "That was that part of the story of my life. It went
Yeah,
that
that
way,
was
and
it.
that's what
It just
happened."
ended.
So let's talk about now because I
Mm,
am so proud of you. Melinda
oh,
said, "Thank you for making the decision to choose you and your children. Thank you for choosing to be the statistic that made it rather than statistics that didn't make it." So that is true. We have so many women and men that do not make it out. And so thank you for choosing your life and making that
right.
decision to move forward. And now you're an advocate. So Misty is a survivor advocate. What does advocacy looks like for you?
Advocacy for me looks like changing people's lives. Supporting women when they need it the most, not telling women how to feel, not telling women how to survive per se, but trying to get women in the right state of mind to realize that they're worth more than what they're given. You know what I mean? Like more than what the man or you know, if it's a man, more than what the woman's giving to him. You know what I mean? Just advocating in a way that makes them feel like I'm special enough to get freedom and I don't have to put up with this because there's a life out there for me and I don't have to deal with this type of trauma. I'm better than this. So, my phone stays open 24/7 and it hardly ever closes. I take advocacy calls, on a regular. So, and I do take me time, because I have to do that for my my mental stability because it's heavy. It's a heavy subject. And, during the month of October, I've worked every day, just about it. Actually, for the past 3 months, I've just about worked every day because I just got done training let's say my second round of training to get my recertification as a victims advocate because I've been certified for 4 years. So,
We're always trying to improve and grow and be
mhm,
able to help other people. And I think that's
right,
important. And I value that in you is that you're taking your experiences and helping other women. And you live in a very small community. Can
hmm
you speak on just in your area the amount of domestic violence, of just some of the things that going on in your small area? Because a lot of times we think it's a big city thing.
right.
It's not just a big city thing.
Actually, right, and actually, in rural communities, it's a lot worse than it is sometimes in bigger cities, and that's because women are secluded. There's not that many gas stations around, in that little rural part of town. You gotta drive a certain miles to get to a convenience store, a grocery store, somewhere where you can get help sometimes. And sometimes it takes law enforcement or 911 to come out, slower than it would for someone in the city. You know what I mean? So potentially that can mean a lot more danger for women. And it don't come out that much here. I mean, it does hiddenly, like silently come
Mhm.
out. I get silent messages or silent phone calls or, this person or that person. But since I've came out as an advocate and people know more now that I am an advocate, it's been published in the paper this past month, which I want to say something about that because I'm at all at the Miss The lady that did the article, me and her became very close friends, and I took two survivors in the community that I'm very close to, and one of them I was a childhood friend with. We were friends in high school, and we had been talking for several years about, I survived domestic violence, she did too, and so she was just in the right. You know what I mean? Like God spoke to me about who to pick to take on this journey with me. So I took them to the newspaper. We went to the newspaper, met up there, and one of the editors there, she wrote the articles. I did a podcast with both women, and I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want them to get, I should have asked for permission before the podcast to mention them. But we did this whole series. Um, Me and Amy, well, I'll just say Amy, we did a whole series in the paper, and the ladies told their stories, which is so powerful. And I feel like that it's changing the community a little bit because I've had two or three ladies that have messaged me and said, "How can I tell my story?" And I love that. I'm like, "Okay, all right, let's hear you." You know? And one of the girls, she's not complete yet with her story. She's still got to talk some more on the podcast, and we're going to talk. And she's advocating. She advocates with me. If she hears of a lady having problems or anybody, she'll call me or she'll hit me up and be like, you know, and she'll give them advice. And you know what? I'm proud that she's becoming the survivor that she's becoming. You know what I mean? Like she's becoming on another level of healing now on the other side. And then the other lady, she advocates through, she does a thing where she buys clothing through, it's called Beautiful Disaster. And she'll buy women that can't afford to buy something, she'll buy it for them. So she's really kind hearted. And that's how her advocacy is for her. We all go through different types of advocacy. Yours might not be your phone staying open like mine does 24/7, but survivors can be advocates as long as they're on the other side of healing. And these are getting there. You know what I mean? Especially my one friend. She's really becoming into her own self. And I'm here for it. I'm living for it. I think as advocates and survivors, we need to support each other, and the more that we support each other and cheer each other on, the better that we are, the stronger we are,
It makes you feel good to see on the other side, to see somebody on their healing journey, because advocacy work is hard. It's hard
Yes.
hearing the stories and being there and
Right.
and seeing the tears and hearing the tears. It's hard work,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
rewarding at the same time when you can save a life. And I
Yes.
love that you're doing it in a small community because you're still very impactful. And I'm hoping that the viewers and the listeners can see that they can make a difference in their own community. I always say, Martin Luther King Jr. said, everyone can't be famous, but we all can be great. You could be great in your own community. And that is
Yes.
what I look at the definition of Misty. She's great in her own community. And I think that is so important that we pull together and support one
Yes.
another. Give a hug. It's COVID, so it kind of sucks with hugs right now. But
Yeah.
we can always hug each other. We can listen and just be there. And you
Right.
chose to go to school and get training to become a victim advocate, which is
Yes.
anyone can do. Anyone
Right.
can do.
Yeah.
Anyone can. And
Um, Now I'll tell you, the podcast has really became a thing on its own. I mean, it's kind of become its own thing. And I don't know how to explain how it's became its own thing, but I had a friend that was actually on the podcast, one of the ladies, and she hit me up on Instagram and said, "Misty, you've went worldwide. A lady from Singapore told me about your podcast." And she was one of the guests on the podcast. So she was like, "I know, I was one of her guests on the podcast." But she was like, "It's went worldwide, really." And I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty neat. I've not heard that." So it has become a thing of its own. It's got a life of its own. And um, I've got a guest that's very impactful, and she did an A&E series just here recently. Well, I don't know how long it's been, but it's about a tragic story about her babies and about domestic violence story. And she did Evil Lives Here. that series, and I just posted it on my Facebook page, and and I did a podcast with a Ted Bundy survivor, you know, Kathy Kleiner. You and I did a podcast on I'm Survivor
We did a
podcast.
podcast.
And
Oh,
I'm very
wow.
proud of that. Yeah.
Can you
Liked it.
tell us the name of your podcast and how
It's
people can?
yeah. It's I'm a Survivor podcast, and they can Google it. They can go to iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you can hear a podcast, you
Mhm.
can hear it.
Yeah.
So
And I love your podcast. I love the platform. For one, I didn't have to get dressed up because there's no video attached. So
right, yeah, right,
so I could just
yeah,
be myself, right?
mhm,
And then just having a conversation with someone who loves advocacy and just want
mhm,
to help. That's what it's about. Just wanting to be able to help in our community and want to bring a spotlight to survivors who are healing to show others that it's possible.
right,
It's possible to
yeah,
get out. It truly is.
definitely,
And
definitely,
I want us to continue encouraging those and letting people know that sometimes you don't know what your relationship is going to turn into. Like you
right.
said,
That's exactly right. No,
sometimes you don't
and
know.
I'm like you are. I have come across some of the most wonderful people in the world. I have met some of the biggest advocates in the world. Julie Owens, Kit Gurrell, some women that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And they have made a name for themselves. And, Julie was recently on the podcast. So, that was a big deal for I'm a Survivor podcast to get Julie Owens, because she's basically a dictionary encyclopedia for advocacy. So that was a big deal for me to get to, podcast with my mentor. She's one of my mentors. So, I admire her work, and I follow her work, and, I'm just a sponge at this time in my life. So,
I am a sponge as well. And I try to be around people that I can learn from,
hmm
and I learned a lot from you. You was like, Vanessa, I drop my podcast in every group. I was like, do you? I learned something from you, and I learned something from you, regardless of where you're from. They're from a small town, but that doesn't matter. We're
right.
different races. That doesn't matter. People have experiences no matter where they're from, what they look like, their culture, their background. We all experience things differently. And that's what I get from you. You're no different, and you're just as loving and kind. And I want people to be able to reach out to you, especially within the state of Alabama, within your community. I think that is so important. And I
Right.
want to know, is there anything that you want to tell the community of how they could be supportive of other victims?
They can just help. You know what I mean? Like if you see awareness going on, be aware. Wear some purple in the month. You know what I mean? Show your love for women. If you see a survivor and you hear her story, or she's been through this difficult time, reach out and shake her hand and say, "Look, I read your story, or I believe in you, or you don't have to worry about this, because we're not going to tolerate that here." You know what I mean? Like just rally around women, because that's the biggest problem. People want to keep this in the closet like it's taboo when it's not. This is going on, and it's killing women. The statistics are high for women. There are some men that are abused too. It goes in both ways. But, the community needs to be supportive and rise above for awareness. And not just in Awareness Month, but every month. We need to share awareness. But I can tell you another thing. Um, to be able to put purple ribbons on the law enforcement, and to put it on the city council in this community is a very big deal for me, to see that go on here. And I want that to get bigger. I want everybody to wear purple ribbons, because I
Mhm.
think that we could all improve as a community when it comes to this subject.
Helping other advocates and organizations raise awareness is very important.
Mhm.
And it also
Yes.
allows people to know that you are an advocate, that you're a supporter, that you could be a friend, and they can come and talk to you. So that is
Right.
so important. I always ask people to just share our message so that others who
Yes.
need help can see it, because they may not. Rochelle said she's a sponge too, and she loved this information, and she thanked you for sharing. And I thank her,
Oh,
Rochelle. Yeah.
you're welcome.
She's a sponge too. I think that's important. I always encourage the community too to say things like, "How can I help you? What do you need from me?"
Mhm.
That is priceless. Yeah.
Yes.
That is priceless, just to ask the questions and not to put somebody down. And your friend
Yes.
who is buying clothes for victims, that is priceless, to just buy
Yeah.
something nice for somebody and to
Right.
love on them and to encourage them and not put them down, because it is
Right.
very hard to leave a relationship. It's
You
hard.
know, I do wanna do a big shout out to the survivors that I worked with and the editor. They're more like my sisters in my family now than ever. And, they keep saying, "Thank you, Misty. Thank you for your help. We will, we just admire you. We love you so much. Thank you so much for being you and helping us." But what they really don't know is they've really helped me.
Yeah, yeah.
They've really helped me. My heart is just, boo, it could explode with happiness. They've really helped me. They've helped
And
me.
they're showing you appreciation for sharing your story, for the work that
Right.
you do. It makes your experience purposeful.
Yes.
That's what I
Oh,
say to
yeah.
people when they thank me for sharing. You just validated that the hell that I went through was for a purpose. And so
Yes.
you survived it, and it was purposeful
Yeah.
because you've turned that thing around. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't tell you how proud I am of you for saying you're gonna do something about it. And
Yeah.
even when there are real big major advocate organizations in your community, it doesn't matter. They could still be like you and make a difference on a smaller
Yeah.
scale, which is also a very large scale as well.
Right, right. And, for the hey, William. And for, the lady that is very close to me, like I said, she may not be in the public eye like I am, and she may not have her picture all over the Facebook and may not be in the calendars and all these other things, like Misty is, but she makes a difference. And her son is going on to be an advocate. Like, I'm just so, so just full of joy for them because they're amazing. They are absolutely amazing people.
I love it.
They
So,
are.
can you tell people again how to find your podcast? And if they want to contact you, how can they contact Misty?
Um, since we're public on Facebook, I won't put my number out there because my number was published in the paper locally. So the people from my county locally have my phone number. It's in the paper.
Mhm.
But um like to reach me if you're online, you can reach me at hmisty387 at gmail.com. That's my email. If you need my help, you can contact me because I don't just advocate my community, I advocate all over social media. I help women all over the world. So people don't know that either, I don't think, but I do. I have for a while now. And I know a lot of different advocates that may not be in Alabama. They could be, Maryland, wherever else, New York, California, even. And they will contact the local shelters. And we just have this big network. We network. That's what we do.
That's what it's
So,
about. That's what it's
yes,
about.
ma'am. Yeah.
If they want to be on your podcast and share their story, how
Mm.
can they contact you through that? Say an email?
Yeah, they can. And it's I'm a Survivor podcast. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Google. Golly, there's like 20 different platforms that the podcast is actually on. And you can Google it, it just comes right up. So
Yeah, and you're so easy to talk to. So I think that if people are ready, then they should really contact you to be on your podcast, because you do have a very wide reach and it's healing. When we decide to hush no more, it's a way to heal. It's a way to get to the next
yes.
level in our lives.
Yes.
And just, I could see that just with you, that you have grown so much since you started your podcast and actually started advocating for others. And so we can turn our
Yes.
lives around. That is so important.
Right.
Yes.
Definitely.
Is there any last words that you want to share before we end the podcast?
Yeah, I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
You're all over the place, gal. I see you. I see your advocate. You're strong. Miss Vanessa's strong.
Thank you.
So people can contact you too. Maybe you need to put a shout out.
Well, if they're watching this or listening, then they are already following me and they know that I am a safe space where people can trust. And I
Yes,
think
you
that's
should.
important that people could see the love that we share. That's what it's about.
Yes.
Sharing love and
Yes.
kindness is how we reach others, and I see that in so much in you by just sharing
Oh,
love and kindness, a safe space. And that's what people
yes.
need in our community, and I value that. And so at this moment, Misty, I honor you for deciding to hush no more. You are an amazing, amazing advocate, a survivor, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend, and that is very important to have in our community and so that people can know women like you. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank
And
you for this.
I look forward to just supporting you any way I can, any way that
Thank
I
you.
can. Um, I really
And
do think.
likewise, likewise.
Thank you, Courtney. All right.
Thank
So
you.
you heard from the amazing Misty. She truly is amazing, and she is a champion in our community, which is so important. If you are a champion and advocate, if you are a survivor, please reach out to us so you can also be a guest on the Hush No More Champions podcast and live Facebook show because it is important that individuals hear your story once you start healing, and so it can inspire others in our community. This month, we have some more events that's coming up. We have the Grace International Gala this Saturday, October 30th. We are dressing up, putting on our mask, and unveiling in the name of domestic violence, which is so important. St. John Baptist Church is also hosting a domestic violence walk Saturday morning in Columbia, South Carolina. Would love to see all of you there as well. We have a busy weekend as we're ending and wrapping up domestic violence. There's still a lot of events in your own communities that you can support and raise awareness and let communities know that you're out there as a safe space. Also, on November 13th, we have the Women Empowerment Brunch in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I will be speaking there, encouraging women to hush no more and just talking about severe survivors and how we can overcome fears. That is so important that fear can be faced. You just got to do it. And so we'll be talking about that. In November 21st, we are supporting veterans in our community in Columbia, South Carolina at our office. If you are an organization that would like to support veterans and give away any items, or if you are a veteran, we would love for you to attend so that we could just show some love and kindness and thank you for your service and give you some resources in our community. So we have a busy month coming up. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. You could join Hush No More Champions and just continue to just love on each other in our community. And remember that you have a right to tell it and heal. It's your story. You don't have to hush. You can get help. You can get resources. You can reach out to us. Our number is 1-888-285-2161. Our website is www.hushnomore.org. And you can instant message us, text us. We are always available. So thank you once again, Misty. Peace and blessings to you all. I am very thankful for all of you. Oh, one more thing. Melinda also reminded me about the virtual domestic violence walk tomorrow. And it's also
Oh,
going to be downtown in Columbia, South Carolina. I think it's at 6 p.m., Melinda. I have it on my calendar to attend. So we'll be doing 3,000 steps for domestic violence. And I don't know how many steps that is. Well, my Fitbit always say 10,000. That's my max. So Melinda, I will be there. So thank you for the reminder. So peace and blessings to you all. I thank you for just being a support. Thank you, Misty. Peace and
you're
blessings.
welcome, Vanessa. We got a good podcast.